There is a food sitting in your refrigerator right now that most doctors have spent decades warning you against, and yet the latest research is quietly proving them wrong. I am talking about eating 6 whole eggs every single day for the next 30 days. Not egg whites. Not one egg with a side of toast. 6 complete eggs, yolk included, every single morning for a full month. By the time we finish walking through this, you will understand exactly why this simple, cheap food might do more for your body than half the supplements sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now. For decades, eggs carried a warning label in the public imagination. High cholesterol, heart disease risk, something to limit or avoid entirely if you cared about your health. This advice shaped how an entire generation ate breakfast. But here is what almost nobody talks about. Large-scale research tracking hundreds of thousands of people over many years found something that directly contradicts this old warning. People who ate eggs daily did not show higher rates of heart disease. In many cases, they showed better markers of metabolic health than people who avoided eggs entirely. The fear was built on outdated science, and yet it still shapes how millions of people eat breakfast every single morning. Before we go further, there is something critical you need to understand, because it changes everything about whether this experiment actually works. Not all eggs are created equal, and this is not about marketing labels. Walk into any store, and you will see terms like cage-free and free-range printed proudly on the carton. These sound reassuring, but they mean far less than you think. Cage-free simply means birds are not physically locked in a cage. They can still be crammed by the thousands into a dark, crowded warehouse. Free-range only requires that the birds technically have access to the outdoors, even if that access is a small door they never actually use. What you actually want is pasture-raised, chickens that genuinely roam outside, eat insects, and get real sunlight. The difference shows up the moment you crack the egg open. Pasture-raised eggs have a deep, almost orange yolk, while factory farm eggs are pale and washed out. That color difference is not cosmetic. It reflects a dramatically higher concentration of vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants. With that foundation set, let us walk through exactly what happens inside your body week by week over this 30-day period, because the changes do not all happen at once. Your hunger signals shift first, then your brain chemistry changes. Then something happens with your muscle tissue that most people never expect. And finally, we need to talk honestly about cholesterol, because the real science here is far more interesting and far less frightening than what you were taught growing up. In the first week, the most noticeable change has nothing to do with your weight and everything to do with your hunger. Most people live in a state of what researchers sometimes call hidden starvation, eating plenty of calories throughout the day while their body still quietly craves real nutrition. A typical processed breakfast, cereal, toast, a pastry, sends your blood sugar sharply upward. Your pancreas responds by flooding your system with insulin, and within an hour or two, your blood sugar crashes, leaving you hungry, irritable, and reaching for something sweet all over again. 6 eggs completely interrupts this cycle. You are consuming roughly 30 grams of protein and 25 grams of healthy fat in one sitting. A combination that triggers the release of satiety hormones telling your brain clearly, we have what we need, stop searching for food. Because eggs barely move your blood sugar at all, your insulin stays low and stable, and for the first time in a long time, your energy throughout the morning stops spiking and crashing. By the second week, something shifts in your mental clarity. Eggs are one of the richest natural sources of a nutrient called choline, and most people walking around today are quietly deficient in it without ever realizing why they feel foggy. Your brain uses choline to build a chemical messenger responsible for memory, focus, and learning. 6 eggs deliver a substantial daily dose of this nutrient, and people consistently describe the change as a fog lifting, an ability to focus on a task without their mind constantly drifting. At the same time, the deep orange yolks from properly raised eggs contain 2 protective compounds that accumulate directly in your retina, quietly shielding your eyes from the daily strain of screens and blue light. Week 3 introduces a concept most people have never heard of, biological value, essentially a measure of how efficiently your body can actually use the protein you eat. A typical protein shake gets converted into usable tissue at a surprisingly low rate. Much of it simply gets burned off as energy and wasted. Whole eggs sit near the very top of this scale. Your body can put nearly half of every gram to direct use. This matters enormously as you get older, because after 30, your body naturally begins losing muscle mass every single year, a process tied directly to weakness and frailty later in life. And here is something people consistently get wrong. Separating the egg white from the yolk to save calories actually destroys much of this benefit, because the yolk contains the very nutrients your body needs to properly use the protein sitting in the white. By week 4, we finally have to address cholesterol directly, because this is where the old fear completely falls apart under real scrutiny. Your own liver manufactures far more cholesterol every single day than you could ever eat in a normal meal, and it constantly adjusts its own production based on what you consume. Eat more dietary cholesterol, your liver simply produces less. This self-regulating system is why, for the vast majority of people, eating cholesterol from food has remarkably little effect on the cholesterol circulating in their blood. More importantly, cholesterol is the raw material your body uses to manufacture testosterone, estrogen, and nearly every major hormone you rely on daily. Now let us talk about how to actually make this work in real life, because the benefits we just walked through depend entirely on two things most people get wrong: the quality of the eggs and the way you cook them. Start with sourcing. Look specifically for the words pasture-raised on the carton, not cage-free, not free-range. Those labels tell you very little about actual nutrition. If you can find a local farm or farmer's market source, even better, since you can often ask directly about how the chickens are raised. The color of the yolk is your simplest visual test. A deep, rich orange yolk is a strong sign you are getting the nutrient density this entire protocol depends on. Cooking method matters just as much as sourcing, and this is where people accidentally undo most of the benefit. The nutrients and healthy fats concentrated in the yolk are sensitive to high heat and oxygen exposure. If you cook your eggs on high heat until the yolk turns pale, dry, and slightly gray around the edges, you have oxidized much of what made the yolk valuable in the first place, and oxidized cholesterol behaves very differently in your body than the fresh version. The goal is simple: keep the yolk soft. Soft-boiled, poached, or gently over easy all work beautifully. If you prefer scrambled eggs, cook them low and slow in a small amount of good quality butter, stirring gently and pulling them off the heat the moment they still look slightly wet and glossy, since the residual heat finishes the job without destroying the nutrients. Here is a simple way to structure your 30 days. Each morning, prepare your 6 eggs using one of these gentle cooking methods, paired with a source of fiber like sautéed spinach, tomatoes, or avocado if you enjoy it. Pay attention to how you feel by mid-morning during the first week. Most people notice the disappearance of that familiar energy crash almost immediately. By the second week, notice your ability to focus during tasks that normally feel scattered and difficult. By the third and fourth week, if you have been doing any form of resistance exercise, pay attention to your recovery time and whether your strength feels more consistent day to day. None of this requires giving up other meals or following a restrictive diet plan. It simply requires replacing whatever you currently eat for breakfast with a food your body has actually been designed to use efficiently for hundreds of thousands of years, long before cereal boxes and processed breakfast bars existed. Your body was never afraid of eggs. That fear was taught, not biological. If this breakdown changed how you think about your breakfast, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want more real science explained simply, no gimmicks, no shortcuts, just how your body actually works. And tell me in the comments, are you going soft-boiled or scrambled? And are you ready to commit to 30 days? I will see you in the next one.